At Tweddle, we have been assisting families for more than 80 years and have provided services for thousands of families. Many families are affected by lack of sleep and other sleep difficulties. The Tweddle approach is one way of dealing with these issues. In this video, you will meet a number of families who have had sleep difficulties and who have used the Tweddle approach. You will also see families in the process of implementing these techniques.
Many families who have young children feel that they are the only ones who are experiencing difficulties. We invited a group of families familiar with the Tweddle sleep techniques to talk about their experience.
What's a sleeping problem in one family will not be a sleeping problem in another family, and really the sleeping problem is about when it's affecting you as a family and affecting the way that you're functioning.
Our main sleep issue was everybody wants to come and cuddle the newborn baby, so it was constantly, you'd just get her down, and as soon as she started to stir, just in between those sleep cycles, visitors would assume, okay, she's ready to wake up. And it's obviously not enough, but she was up.
So for you it was trying to avoid getting into a catnapping pattern, and it sounds like...
He fall asleep for 30 minutes and he get up and he wanted to get up to play, and we thought that he had enough, and yeah, same thing, we pick him up and get him out.
And was he hard to get to sleep in the evenings?
In the evening he used to be get up every 1 hour, and I have to hold him until he fall asleep, and we used to share bed with him too. He won't sleep by himself.
Yeah, she's really tired. Oh, let's feed her, feed her and put her to bed, and then sort of she'd be waking up half an hour later and we'd be going, what, just fed you and put you to bed, you were really tired.
And the mum insisted, like, oh, you must be hungry. I think quite often she was waking up just on a full belly. That was really grumbly.
My challenge with the twins was that we had to get them established into a routine so that they could sleep at the same time and feed at the same time. Unless you did that, you could go through and just not sleep for 3 days.
I work shift work as well, which sort of exacerbates things at times, and it was like I'd just pull my hair out because we were getting woken up sort of 3 or 4 times a night.
I didn't have the energy to play actively with her, and I think it was kind of a bit of a vicious circle because of that. I thought, oh, well, at least there's closeness through the breastfeeding at night, and so I was kind of always making up for things I wasn't doing in the day, but I wasn't doing them because I was tired and I was up at night, so it was just going round.
Everyone's had a very different experience at different ages and stages and needed to make changes at different points. So for some of you, you've made changes independently, and some of you have needed a bit more assistance and support in making those changes.
The Tweddle sleep techniques are divided into 3 age-specific approaches based on children's developmental stages. The aim of each of the techniques shown is to teach your baby or child to fall asleep and to resettle by themselves. Neil and Natasha will be using techniques with Gabby that are designed for 6 to 12-month-old babies.
Yeah. So we're just hoping that we'll learn some techniques to perhaps settle her a bit more easily and to get her sleeping through the night.
Tracy will be using techniques with Chloe designed for children over the age of 1.
She wakes up 3 to 4 times throughout the night, sometimes awake for a few hours, bad temper, and just hoping to get her a bit better.
Lisa will use specific techniques with Charlotte that are suitable for babies under 6 months.
What happens when you don't have enough sleep?
Normal demands that kids make and normal levels of noise and crying and stuff just become really unbearable.
Well, you don't have the energy to do things. You can't think things through clearly, and things become a bit more of an issue than they should be. Life's harder without sleep.
Puts a lot of emotional strain on the relationship itself.
Why do you think kids need to sleep?
They're really growing, and they're watching everything we're doing, and they're learning our language, and they're learning everything right from the word go.
So it's an important part of their growth and development, and
Very
gives
much
them
so.
some time to wind down.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah.
I know with our little one who's 4 months, if she doesn't get enough sleep, she's just really erratic and finds it really difficult to concentrate on anything. And
They can feed well if they sleep well.
In order to understand the Tweddle settling and sleep techniques, it is helpful to know about the way that we sleep. After falling asleep, we move from light sleep to deep sleep and then back again. For babies, this sleep cycle is 20 to 40 minutes long. The length of this cycle increases gradually to 60 minutes for toddlers. Between each sleep cycle, children and babies wake or rouse briefly and then resettle to sleep. For most children, one sleep cycle or a cat nap is not enough for them to be able to function well. In this light sleep stage, some children are not able to settle or resettle by themselves. They rely on their parents to help them in a variety of ways. These are called sleep associations. Sometimes these sleep associations can cause problems for a family.
So it sounds like for all of you, some of the issues have been what we call sleep associations, where the babies have learnt to fall asleep with rocking or cuddling or feeding, and if they're not sleeping for long enough, you've needed to find a way to actually get them back to sleep, and quite often that's around feeding or rocking or patting or driving around the block in the car at its very worst. We've heard lots of creative solutions, yeah.
We tried singing from our bedroom to see if she could hear it in that room.
In addition to sleep associations, one of the problems parents often describe is children becoming overtired and overstimulated, reaching a point where they are unable to go to sleep. Many parents find a feed, play, sleep pattern helpful to manage both sleep association problems and overtiredness.
Have any of you used the sort of feed, play, sleep concept that we talk about?
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about that, Lester, and how that works?
First thing, when she's getting up from her sleep, we've been feeding her then, and I'm finding that she's really hungry and feeds really well. After that, as a newborn baby, she was literally having half an hour's play and then going back down again. So she was up for a period of about an hour or so. And from that, I found that if she was having a play, she goes down really well.
I didn't know that he had to play because I think that's too young for him to play. So, and I tried to put him back to sleep again, and then he tried to protest. I tried to feed him to sleep because that's the only way that I can do it. Otherwise, he cries so much, he tried to protest.
So now you feed him when he wakes up rather than feeding him to go off to sleep.
I feed him and then he play and he show all the sign of sleepiness, and then I get him to go to bed, and it's so really good. Yeah.
It's much more pleasant to breastfeed her, 10 minutes after she wakes up. We're both in a good mood. I've had a break. Whereas when they start to get tired, you kind of think, oh, now I've got to sit down and wrestle with this baby. When you do feed, play, sleep, she's had her feed, she's had her solids, she's had her play. Takes out that element of, maybe this, maybe that, that mums go through.
You talked about the tired signs. What are those? How do you know he's tired?
Suck his hand. We thought that he hungry again, and we feed him again. He overfeed and he throw out everything. And now I know that it's a sign of sleepiness. And he rub his eyes and he's staring something, he really quiet, he doesn't want to play anymore. So I know that the time to get him to cot.
I think that was a real eye-opener for us, like particularly the things like how she becomes clingy. And we you know, at first sort of thought, oh, it's just attention, like, you know, she crawls really quickly and like she'll be like crawling after us and the old, you know, grab the jeans and try and get up, and it's sort of like, you know, baby sort of trying to climb up your leg, yeah. And I mean, I would never have known it's a classic sort of tired sign, and that's one that Gabby exhibits sort of quite a lot.
The yawning, rubbing eyes, bright red eyebrows.
Yeah.
About your boys, how do you know they're tired?
Yeah, we have the classic signs like the rubbing of the eyes and yawning. One of our twins gets red cheeks. They become clumsy, they might hurt themselves, bump into things, and when they were really little they might have, you know, clenched their fists or, you know, got a little bit sort of shaky, so to speak.
We're really talking about a whole range of tired signs, aren't we? In sort of small babies, it can be, you know, getting stiff limbs and a bit rigid and clenching their fists and looking a bit tense in their face, that through to the bigger babies that we're talking about, where you get sort of the Superman running around the room, you know, flying out the window sort of behaviour, which often people think is a sign that children are not ready to go to sleep, but they often have their most active period before they have their longest sleep. So it's very easy to misinterpret that sort of wild kind of behaviour as being too wound up to fall asleep, and some of the clingy behaviour as a sort of misbehaviour rather than a sign that they're just a bit overdone.
It is much more difficult to settle your child once they have become overtired, so it's important to recognise your child's early tired signs. Charlotte's signs are typical of babies under 6 months old. She tugs at her clothes, has jerky leg movements, rubs her eyes. She loses concentration, is restless and is becoming increasingly grisly. Before Charlotte gets overtired, Lisa gets her ready for bed. She makes sure that Charlotte has already been fed, is clean and dry, and gives her a quiet cuddle before putting her into bed. For some very restless babies under the age of 4 months, wrapping your baby can be used while they are learning to go to sleep. Charlotte has grown out of being wrapped, but here is an example of wrapping. It is important to make sure that your baby is not wrapped too tightly or is not too hot. After Lisa puts Charlotte to bed, she waits 20 to 30 seconds to give Charlotte the opportunity to settle herself. As Charlotte has not settled herself, Lisa commences the settling techniques. She avoids eye contact with Charlotte and uses a rhythmic, gentle patting to soothe Charlotte. After 5 minutes, Lisa tries to soothe Charlotte using a rocking motion. Lisa will continue to soothe Charlotte until she is quiet and relaxed but not asleep. As the crying becomes more intense, many parents feel unable to continue. Lisa has learnt that by staying with your baby and giving her comforting messages, the crying will peak and then gradually quieten. Some children will have many smaller crying peaks before they settle. Before Charlotte drops off to sleep, Lisa leaves the room. Lisa has returned to the room when Charlotte is in a deep sleep. She has gently rolled Charlotte onto her back and into a safe sleeping position.
I want to talk to you about your experience of using the techniques to settle babies, and in particular how you manage the crying.
Working with children, I thought, okay, I can do this, this is fine. Started settling her and broke my heart. I was just beside myself. I think I cried more than she did. It was just awful.
You know, that case of the crescendo and the big, you know, scream stage and then that quietening down. That was the hard part, is letting them go and then waiting until they could settle themselves back. I mean, in theory, sure, you can read as much as you like saying your baby's going to cry and it's going to go through this peg and da-da-da, but it will be the hardest thing to actually do when you hear your own baby or babies, in our case, crying.
It is increasingly important as children get older to develop a relaxing and predictable bedtime routine. This might include a bath, a quiet story, milk drink, cleaning your teeth, kisses for everyone, then into bed. Gabby's parents will use a technique appropriate for 6 to 12-month-olds called modified controlled comforting.
Like, I think this is the point where we start, I mean, I do start sort of worrying a bit as to whether there is something actually wrong, you know. Like, I start thinking, oh, you know, she's got an ear infection or something, that because it, you know, it really is every time we put her down, she screams like this. And it's just like, you know, what are we doing wrong, or is there something wrong with her?
After waiting 30 seconds, Natasha goes in and lies Gabby down. She will now pat her until she is quiet and relaxed. You can remain in the room settling your child for up to 10 minutes. After 10 minutes of patting, although Gabby is not responding, Natasha now leaves the room.
She's very determined not to go to sleep.
Natasha has waited for 2 minutes and she now returns to lie Gabby down and to settle her. Gabby quietens down after a few minutes, so Natasha leaves, despite Gabby's protests. Natasha continues this pattern, each time increasing the amount of time she stays out of the room by 2 minutes. First 2 minutes, then 4 minutes, up to a maximum of 10 minutes time out. During the 10-minute time out mark, Gabby finally settles to sleep.
And you just have to actually communicate with each other and tell each other it's okay.
Yes.
While you sit there or lie there in bed and go, oh.
We were just absolutely convinced that Gabby had like an ear infection or something like that, because every time she went horizontal, like whether it be on